Good evening. I welcome everyone to the May 9th regular board meeting. Thank you for joining. We will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Esta junta va a ser conducida en español, pero si alguien necesita traducción, tenemos ese servicio disponible. This meeting will be in English, and just quick housekeeping. If anybody would like to make citizen comment, you can still sign up by completing the form at the entrance of the room and handing it to Kim. Our online viewers had an opportunity to sign up before the meeting. Do we have any amendments or adjustments to the consent agenda? To the agenda? Great. Okay. So now we're moving on to the consent agenda. In the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the April 17th workshop, the April 25th regular board meeting, vouchers and payroll, personnel report, the surplus report, contracts, field trips, and the enrollment and financial reports. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Great. Hearing none. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have citizen comments. Kim? Okay. Perfect. Moving right along. All right, we're moving on to our special presentations, and we have a series of special presentations. Bill, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. I see some students here to give us an update on ASB, and I'd love to invite them up. Thank you, ladies, for being here this evening.
ASB president. Oh, what's up? And my name is Shanissa Hepton, and I'll be the 2023-2024 ASB president. So here's an update of things that have happened since the last time that I talked to you. So on March 24th, our new executive team was elected. And so here is the 2023-2024 ASB executive team. I don't know. Okay, so I kind of said, so I'm ASB president. Our vice president is Max Ibarra. Our secretary is Nico Kaitis, and we will be having co-treasurers, El Donato and Theron Sorum. So after the elections, the new executive team held interviews for next year's coordinators, and over 25 applications were turned in. And after weeks of meeting all the candidates, they've chosen 11 wonderful leaders to join their team. Finally, after the coordinator interviews were over, the class Senate elections were held where each grade voted for 5 representatives for the upcoming school year. And then the new executive team and coordinators will attend the Mount Adams Leadership Camp this August at the CISPIS Learning Center to help prepare them for their responsibilities, grow their leadership skills, and bond as a team. And then because of limited availability for spots that we have going there, the Senate presidents will attend a different leadership camp, could be at the same location, or it's going to be at Eastern. The decision's not been made yet. Recently, the diversity team put on a multicultural fair during lunch where some students can learn more about our world by asking questions and observing multiple informational tables. Their goal for the next year is to try and expand the fair into the community by hosting a portion at the museum. And then on April 29th, the Junior Senate put on a very successful prom in the main gym at Wenatchee High School. The theme was Cloud 9. And my personal highlights of the dance were there was like a 360 video booth thing that had like a little, like, I don't know, guess selfie stick arm. They had set up, the decorations were all lovely. And then the announcements of our top 5 prom royalty members was fun.
So then kind of leading up to April 29th, our spirit team put on a spirit week to include the whole school in the festivities. Monday was purple and gold. Tuesday was beach day. Wednesday was pink. Thursday was retro day. And Friday was PJ or dress down before you dress up. And our mascot, Elwood, was seen every morning at the front doors dressed up in that day's themes alongside many spirited ASB members.
And then the Friday before prom, a pep assembly was held to celebrate our spring sports, and then the dance, and the top 10 royalty dressed up as duos. They performed a handshake in front of the school. And then everyone in the spring sport did like a mini glow in the dark parade around the gym. And then there were some very unique games with student volunteers that had everyone laughing and excited. It was very fun. It was a very successful assembly put on by our assemblies team.
And then as the school year comes to a close, the high school is busy with finals, AP exams, and state testing. Students are starting to get their schedules for next year, and seniors are looking to the future. May 1st was National Decision Day. So on May 2nd, the Career Center and Counseling Office put on a Decision Day celebration during lunch for seniors where they could take a picture in a photo booth and grab a cupcake.
And then a few weeks ago, seniors met up at Walla Walla Park to play basketball, tennis, spike ball, and socialize. And then tomorrow they'll be decorating the parking lot with sidewalk chalk.
The cultural team is also hard at work organizing the infamous lip dub. This is one of the largest things that ASB puts on, so I'm really excited to see how that turns out.
And then after the seniors graduate, there's going to be a field day celebration for students to celebrate the end of the year.
And then finally, so graduation is a month away now. And even though seniors have mixed emotions about moving on to their next stages of life, the majority are ready and counting on the days till June 9th.
So that's all that we have for tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Questions?
I just want to say congratulations to the new executive team and thank you, Courtney. Hopefully we'll get to see you one more time, but if not,
I don't think so.
all right.
I think this is my last one.
Okay, well,
Okay.
congratulations. and-
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I'd like to welcome our Executive Director of Human Resources with a little celebration on that.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm incredibly proud to give a quick shout out to our roughly 500 certificated staff. It's really hard to explain what our certificated staff have done without also including the COVID years. Our certificated staff have really pivoted from the typical teaching that we've all known, that in-person, in-building, to the fully online, to the hybrid, to the we're back, to the, oh no, your class is now shut down and you're back online. We are now fully back in person, but teaching is so very different than it was pre-COVID. The students are different. The learning is different. The landscape is different. And the teachers just really continue to adjust. And I think that speaks to the quality of teaching staff that we have in our district. And I think that includes everybody, lots of people in this room. Every time something gets thrown at our teaching staff, we always hear, wow, that's a lot, but that's what's best for kids. And I hear that statement so often that I am now starting to repeat it, and I don't even work directly with kids. Our teachers are also connecting with our students in ways they never have before. And I think with that connection comes that feeling of belonging and acceptance, not just from our students, but also from our teaching staff. And I would say not just our teaching staff, but all of our staff. And with that, I just really want to congratulate our teaching staff on a really successful year and thank them for all their not just hard work, but very tireless work. And so just a big shout out and thank you.
Thank you. Nothing like starting Teacher Appreciation Week with SBA testing, right?
Well, board, one of our big 6 outcomes is that we want students to experience real world relevant learning. And we have a great opportunity to see how some of our students are engaging in real world relevant learning this evening. I'd like to invite Pete Jelsing up. He's our director of the Wenatchee Valley Technical Skills Center. He's going to give you an update and share with you some information about how we provide real world relevant learning opportunities through the Technical Skills Center. So thank you for being here, Pete.
Hey, thank you. Let me just get this really quick, maybe. There it is. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for having me and being able to, this is the first time this year, maybe the second time, but in this setting to be able to talk about specifically the things that we have been doing, our students have been doing. But I also have to say thank you specifically, my evaluator, Mike. He, with his guidance and our amazing conversations, I've really appreciated him over the last couple of years. HR, I know it's been challenging, but yet, Kelly, you continue to do some great things. KK, thank you for stepping up. And Bill, I will just say, because he is our lead in our consortium, if you don't know how that works, I am kind of ran-ish by the superintendents of the districts that we serve. Okay. Bill has had plenty on his plate as well. And he's been at every meeting. He has motivated those other superintendents to get there. We have had the best attendance this year that we've ever had. And I don't know if it's saying a lot. However, it's saying something. And I do appreciate you and the attitude. I would also just, I do mean this. There has been a different feel this year. And I want to make sure that as a board, from the inside at a building, it's felt good, even though we have a lot of challenges. I know with the budget and personnel, but I do want you to know things are looking up. Okay. So with that being said, let's talk about Wenatchee Valley Tech. Okay. Just as a quick, let's see, I'm just going to try and make sure. Okay. Skill centers. We all know Jake Buholtz. He is the director for CTE in the district. He's got a great job. He's doing great things. We obviously are a little bit different. We are CTE. Okay. We have the same rules and regulations for the most part. The difference is, and I know that many of you know this, is that we pull from all the other districts in the Valley. Okay. They were made for districts that do not have the same opportunities or the same dollars and cents to put in programs that have large equipment needs and expenses throughout the year. Okay, so that is one of the main reasons why we have tech centers throughout. We are one of 13, and I will tell you, once again, it is an honor and a privilege to be there, but also to have one in the district. Again, 13 throughout the whole state and Wenatchee, and this started many, many years ago. So it's great to have. Below, those are our sending districts, part of our cooperative. This year, I'm just going to go through. We're going to go through each program. There's been a lot of highlights, but these were ones that I just, when I sit back and think, I've had great conversations. And for me, it is the conversations with students and parents that actually trigger, what has been exceptional. With automotive, I think one of the things we've done this year that we haven't necessarily seen in the past has been really helping students. And in particular, one family, cars that are not working, and we're able to pay for those materials and get those cars working. We had one parent, a parent of 4 students who are in this district they were having a hard time. Their car was broke down. And we called home because we hadn't seen the student in maybe a week. And so called up, mom got a hold of her and she said, we're trying to get their car fixed. And we're like, well, do you know what's wrong with it? No. So we had it towed to the shop. It could have gone two ways. The engine was either blown or it was going to be a quick, easy fix. And fortunately, Mr. Luna was able to get in there, take a look, and it turned out to be just a few hour job. Got that car working. What was awesome about this is the young man who comes to our class or to our school, he's a little squirrely and we love that. But he was super, super thankful. And mom actually came in and got to thank the teacher as well. So that was a huge highlight because it did impact and it made a difference in that family's life. When we talk about getting kids out, digital media arts, it's not our biggest class, but as far as what it does, it is pretty impressive. When we take a look, we've got kids, 4 students in Wenatchee Wild. They also now are working the Bighorns game. They're actually on the cameras. All right. And that part is, and they're getting paid. It's $50 every game. I was at the rodeo this past weekend and we had 3 students working that game as well. So they're out there going to school, earning their credits, but also getting jobs on the side as well. Collision repair, a highlight. Luis Arroyo took first place at state skills. What was really neat about this is he's going to Wyotech. Wyotech, because he took first, gave him a $5,000 scholarship to attend. He now is going to Atlanta for the national competition. Depending on how he does there, he could also earn another $5,000 or more in scholarships to whatever school he wants to go to. With that, he gets tools to kind of start that profession as well. Pretty neat. Construction trades, Terry Fike, community. That's the name of the game for them. They are 90% in the field. And what is super interesting over the last 2 years, besides him and being an amazing mentor for our students, they've been working in number 1 Canyon for 2 years. And not on one project. They see our tech center enclosed trailer every day. The neighbors come out. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? They've gotten 4 projects in the last 2 years just going up the canyon. What's cool about that is that they're seeing what our students are doing. But the other thing is it's super close, so we don't have to travel too far. That's a highlight too. Criminal justice. We were chatting about this at the start, kind of a challenge for us. A good friend of mine, Juan Loetta, retired from another career and took a job in his hometown of Moses Lake. That happened midway through this year. He finished out the semester and caused quite a stir amongst our students and families because of the relationships that he built. But incoming, Mr. Jared Reinfeld, which I know our district is well aware of. I didn't think we would ever really be able to replace Juan. Over the first month and a half with Jared, students are in good hands. You know, again, we're taking instructors who have not had background in teaching strategies per se or gone through any formal training. He will be, just side note, but he has stepped in when we were having students say, we're going to leave. We're done that semester. He has got that program back on track and kids are saying a lot of positive things. So that's been a huge win for us. Fire science. This is more of a shout out, a relationship that we have with Orondo Fire Station. They have let us use their filling station over the last 4 years. We haul it down and we fill all of our packs. Really cool. We've actually saved up enough money and by the end of the year, we will have our own filling station on campus. which will save us a ton of time and get kids on air a ton more. Video game programming, hosted tech and tiaras, and that was in conjunction with the ESD. So we had 8th grade students, females from all over the valley, get bussed in, and they did a little bit of coding, a little bit of electronic work, and they made some other, well, they also made the tiaras. They had them flashing and whatnot, which was a pretty fun day. Kind of big news. We've been working on this for many years, and we are happy to say that we are ready to go. We'll have health occupations at the skill center starting in the fall. And that, yep, great. Thank you. That's really a big one. Great. It's like I said, it's been a long time coming, but we're super excited. Second session is already full. We're working to get that first session full heading in the fall. Entrepreneur class. This was the first full year that we ran this. We run one session of it. It has been great as we continue to grow and build it. Again, the way we kind of run it is Shark Tank is one of the main features that they watch. So they do a lot of that. But yes, understanding business concepts. But what I love the most, as you can tell from the pictures, it is team building and it's kind of a maker space. So again, the whole concept with any type of entrepreneur is creative. Okay. And then taking your thoughts and actually going and build them. And so that is what they've been doing. We share the space with construction because construction's gone a lot of the time. So we have that space that they use. We've created upstairs their own little shop. They've got a lot of new equipment. They've had a lot of fun with it. Cosmetology, again, that's always my favorite. It's so super fun going through all the shops, and then all of a sudden you go through cosmetology. It's a totally different animal. Again, this is something they've been doing for a long time, but they will be doing the special education prom, doing hair and makeup for all of those students. Super cool. Culinary arts. Mr. Kaitis, we have opened up the cafe. So I expect a few. Come on down twice a day. Call us before you come down. So it's open, though. That's important. The other thing is Mr. Kaitis, chef, has actually added 2 more certifications, which is a key, again, for what we're doing. Lastly, just want to give a quick shout out. Summer school dates are June 20th through July 11th. We still have space in several programs, but those who are listening, go ahead and go online and fill out that application and we'll get you in. Next year, I just wanted to share this because this was pretty exciting for us. As of last week, we had over 500 applications heading into the fall school year. Just as a note, I mean, typically speaking, we've been running at 350 students. Now, we're not going to be able to get in all 500 just because some of the programs have waiting lists of 20 or 30 of those students, and those are mainly our shop programs. So we are trying to take those students and say, hey, why don't we try another program or come out in the morning? So yeah, it's been super successful. Just seeing that many applications was, yeah, that was a good slap on the back. So there's the tech center for the year. Questions? Wow.
I do have a question. Regarding the projects for the construction trades, it sounds like you get a lot of referral business. Do you also have a process for folks to apply for projects and any emphasis on spreading that out geographically and economically throughout our community?
I guess there is really no formal way. we get just calls. I mean, that's basically how it happens. From one year to the next, I mean, we may have a bunch or not. And then the decisions generally are made on, where are we at in the units that we're going through? Does it match what they're learning? And then the other thing is the geographic piece is, I like it. But because of time and cost to travel, we like I kind of said, we really try to stay closer than going too far. Otherwise, we spend all the time in the car and not on the job site. So I guess if we're talking geographic, Eastmont, I mean, we've done several, but there is really no formal. People hear about it. We don't really advertise, but that's something we could do. To say, hey, we could put together a online link. If you have a project, fill out this and we could take a look at it. Yeah.
And by geographically, I was not implying out of district. I
Yeah.
was operating under the assumption that we would be focusing on in-district projects. But, Number One Canyon has a certain level of assumed economic level, and it would be interesting, I think, to serve a variety of people of different needs. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
would
it.
Play well in the community, I think.
Yeah. Understood. All righty. Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jelsing. And I will say I have been to the cafe and it's worth the trip. I would like to invite Jeremy Wheatley and Heidi Buskup. They're going to give us a little bilingual program update. We had this on the docket for one of the board workshops earlier this year, and we just ran out of time. So they were gracious enough to come and provide that update this evening. And I may be batting back and forth with them. We'll see on some of these slides. So welcome to Jeremy and Heidi. Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you. Yes, so I'm Jeremy Wheatley. I'm the Director of State and Federal Programs. And last time I was here, I think it was last fall, we talked about just all the special programs and grants that are managed at the state and federal level. And so tonight we want to talk more specifically about our transitional bilingual program, TBIP, and our multilingual learners and how we serve them. And basically the models we serve them by, some of the challenges that we're seeing, but also some of our goals for next year and some optimism out there. So we'll just, as the slideshow that looks familiar. All right. Okay, so transitional bilingual program. First of all, every family that registers in Wenatchee School District has to fill out a home language survey. What I want to illustrate is how do we identify students? Because our community is predominantly split between whites and Hispanics, oftentimes multilingual services, we conflate Spanish, the language Spanish, as being a distinct tie. And so it happens, although that is the primary second language in our community, I want you to think about how we identify students and our obligations to families that are both Spanish and other languages as well. Every family new to the district fills out a home language survey as part of the registration process. They have to identify the first primary and preferred language in their home. And if any of those languages on those responses are other than English, we have to issue a screener. We currently have 23 languages in the district, and right now we have about 1,700 students who qualify for transitional bilingual services. What you'll find out is it is the obligation of the district, both at the BEA level and with our grant funds, to meet those needs of those multilingual learners. And the services must be appropriate for all students. Again, I referenced that although our second language is predominantly Spanish in our community, the top 5 languages that get identified through the screening process are Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, and Punjabi. Keep in mind that the goals and objectives of this program is to deliver services regardless of what that second language is. And the primary objective for all is a transition to English proficiency. So we want to move students to English proficiency among their peers within 6 years. And that is a very tall order. But that's what the state has identified as the objective. And so that's what we're aiming to do. So if we see any language other than English, we issue a screener to that student. The screener is a part of the WIDA assessment. The WIDA is the language framework that that the state has adopted, and students are assessed if they are qualified for the program. This is the assessment that then they eventually take annually to assess their progress. Either way, they take an assessment and they are scored in 4 areas of language: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Think of it as a 6-point scale within each of those domains. 1 would be a beginning speaker, a newcomer, maybe a monolingual student. 6 would be a student who is fluent, is proficient in English as well as potentially their second language. Regardless, they're proficient enough in English for whatever reason that they would maybe score a 6. So they get scored in each of those 4 domains on a 1 to 6 scale, but then they receive a composite score. So they receive an averaged out composite score that then qualifies them or exits them from program. And that's important because you need to, again, understand why this is important and where are our kids. So as I said, we have approximately 1,700 students identified in our bilingual program. We have 24 languages, 5 primary, with really Spanish being the majority. Either way, this is a breakdown of last year's assessment of students. We last year assessed around 1,620-ish. And so as you can see, based on last year's WIDA assessment, this was the breakdown of proficiency. We had 255 students score kind of at the beginning level. We had 340 between the ranges of 2 and 3, 582 between 3 and 4, 131 from 4 to 4.9, and we had 9 students score over 5. So we had 1,625 students or so take the WIDA assessment, and we exited 25. And the state called and said, well, hey, Wenatchee, why aren't you exiting more students? Upon which I responded, well, according to the numbers, nobody in the state exited very many students. That's because WIDA is a new assessment. And so our exiting rate was like just over 1.5%. So was every other district across the state. So that was unfortunately a result that was not specific to Wenatchee. But we're learning more about WIDA. In fact, the 4.7 that is asterisk there, that is what OSPI has deemed proficient. In the world of WIDA, they deem proficiency at a 4. So again, one question I have is, well, if WIDA says proficiency in English is at a 4, why are they requiring a 4.7 on the composite score? And that is something that they are evaluating as we speak. They took a lot of feedback from districts. And so had the proficiency score been a 4, we would have seen many more exit. But that's just something that's in flux, and I just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. But more importantly, are the students that are in that range of 2 to 4. These are referred to, most of our students in this range are students who have been in the bilingual program for 5 or more years. Again, the bilingual program, the priority is to get students to transition to English proficiency within 6. And so for whatever reason, they have gotten to a level and sort of leveled out and been stagnant. They're referred to as long-term English learners, or LTELs. We have about 52%. So again, of the 1,700 right now, students who are bilingual services, about 52% have been in program for a very long time, longer than the state would want that to happen. And again, this is an issue this is not specific to just Wenatchee. We are maybe 1 or 2 percentage points higher than other districts similar to us in demographics. I mean, if we were a lighthouse district, I mean, a goal I think would be in the 40s. And so, but again, that's just as a point of reference and context, many districts would be between 48 and 52%. I'm setting a goal next year of 45, just to sort of, in 2 years, I'd love to get that into the 30s as I learn more about WIDA and more about what we can do in terms of language development. So again, once they take that screener, once they get their get a WIDA score, they are more or less grouped into various categories of proficiency, from newcomers and beginners at that 1 level to developing. Developing would be anywhere from 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Again, our LTELs have been in program for more than 5 years. And then we also, even when a student exits, if we have a TBIP student, maybe in the 8th grade, and they've been receiving services at the middle school, and they do well on the WIDA assessment and they are exited, we are obligated to monitor their academic progress for 2 years. So even though they're out of program and we're not getting funding for them, we have to make sure we have eyes on their progress to make sure they're doing well 2 years after being served. And then one additional group of students that we have to be aware of are our Alaska Natives and American Indians. Again, these are students who by and large are speaking English, but may have a native or heritage language that they have the right to maintain, and so depending on the background, they may have enough English proficiency to pass a screener. However, we are obligated, again, much like an exited student, we are obligated to identify who are our Alaska Natives and American Indians, and we have to monitor their academic progress, because if they begin to slip academically, we need to intervene to make sure that we can ensure that language is not a contributing factor. So if we have high schoolers, Alaskan Native, American Indian, that are, for example, failing a math class, we need to intervene, screen that student for a language proficiency to make sure that we can deduce whether or not language, if it is a part of that academic concern. So again, just another group that we are obligated to monitor and be aware of. So they get screened, students get kind of grouped into proficiency levels, and then we intervene accordingly. We intervene primarily in one of 3 ways. The Wenatchee School District has 3 main TBI programs, and those students, these are all have unique outcomes. So when we think about intervening with our multilingual learner, we have to first know what is their proficiency level within WIDA, and then which program are they being served by? Because if they're at Lewis and Clark, they are going to be a part of the dual language program. The dual language program has specific program goals of bilingualism, biliteracy, and biculturalism. So biliterate and bilingual in English and Spanish. So they're able to meet the TBIP objective of English proficiency because bilingualism is a component of one of their primary outcomes. We also have an early exit program. Again, this is a program that is at our elementary schools with the primary goal of transitioning students to full English instruction, and again, to English proficiency. So the difference there is we identify students that are level 1 beginners in their native language. And this is one blessing we have as a district with a large Spanish speaking population, is we have enough students to group them into a class set where we can then leverage their native language to move them into English faster. There's some research associated with that. I'm not an expert. Heidi can help with that, and Mr. Lopez can help as well. But just know that the early exit is we are going to leverage their Spanish language through instruction and through some literacy support so as to move them into English sooner. And then the buildings that are not identified in any of those programs, we would refer to as supportive mainstream. That means we're just going to support all bilingual students. We have some obligations on how we support them, and the format we use is called supportive mainstream. So that would be seen. We still do some supportive mainstream at the elementary levels, at the middle levels, and at the high school, because we are obligated to serve all of our ML learners through the TBIP program. And again, with that, we share the same goal of transitioning all students to English proficiency within 6 years. And so the two areas of support you'll hear about as we move on a little bit is through ELD and meaningful access to content, and we'll highlight that a little bit more in a moment. So the unfortunate reality that we have in trying to move students quickly into English proficiency is that it's proving to be a bit of a challenge. And although, so we shared some data at one of the last workshops, we've only got a couple of snippets just to illustrate a concern that we are well aware of, and that is that our English learners are not transitioning to English proficiency as quickly as we would want them to do, and as quickly as the state would expect us to do. We see that by and large they grow academically. However, they're not growing as fast as their peers. And so when we see learning gaps, those gaps maintain. We see students grow across our district, but we don't see our multilingual learners growing in step or closing that gap, which concerns us. The same can be said, the first slide was reading. This slide is math, both reflecting K-8, fall to winter growth on our iReady assessment, which illustrates the same. Again, we see some positive growth. That is good, but it is perhaps not as great as we would like to see. And so the question is for us is why are we seeing these results, and what can we do to improve them? we know that that when multilingual learners come into high school and they're not keeping up on track graduation, again, with their peers. And although the schedules in our high schools can accommodate extra time, this puts them at a disadvantage when you consider working through completion of their graduation requirements. And so we're considering, well, what can we do to benefit, again, all multilingual learners, certainly those transitioning from 8th grade into 9th grade and through their high school career.
And I think I might plop in here a little on this one as well. This is one that we are tracking as part of the Big Six. And in particular, for us, in terms of paying attention, you see a drop off in both groups, but significant in our multilingual learner group, especially coming out of the pandemic. So that 21-22 year for both sets, those kiddos are sophomores right now. And so we are working hard to help them get back on track. And we've been fairly successful in terms of increasing graduation rate. You'll see some of that on the next slide, but we have some work to do with this group in particular to get them back on track.
Thank you, Bill. And this slide here shows the graduation trends over time. So again, the students that left the system, we were seeing a closing of that opportunity gap where they were in terms of the graduation rate becoming in line with their non EL peers. But we also know that this data is a little bit old, and we know we have a bubble of those sophomores that were coming out of COVID. So we know that we have just an issue to keep an eye on, because unfortunately this trend, due to the pandemic, this trend is going to have to reset as we move into a new phase. But it is a bit optimistic when you think about what our system was able to do for our ML learners prior to the pandemic. Bill, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I will just say that what you see here is aggregate data on 4-year on-time graduation for both Wenatchee High School and Westside High School together. If you were to separate those out, Wenatchee High School's 21-22 on-time graduation rate was 93%. Westside's 21-22 was 60%, and that's on-time graduation. If you were to consider the way Westside functions, they're a different program and are extending into that 5th year and sometimes into that 6th year to get kids through their programs and graduate. If we were to look at the graduation rate that included Westside's 5th year cohort, this would be even higher.
I have a question about this data specifically. So for example, if I'm looking at the 9th grade on track trends, so 17-18, so the graduating class would have been 2021, correct? So freshmen. So our English language learners, 50% of them are on track to graduate. So now we look to the next slide, and this says 81.1% of our English language learners graduated, basically. Am I reading that right?
Are you referencing the slide?
Yeah, so I'm referencing both slides.
No, I think this on track. So this data, if I'm correct, is reflecting when a 9th grader finishes 9th grade, are they on track to graduate? And so in and so this slide indicates that our ELs since 1718, we've seen a decline in the number of multilingual learners
Mhm.
that are on track.
Okay.
And that is also, which is also was brought out in part of the equity audit in terms of, what students perhaps if they've, failed a class or a math class or algebra, that puts them, that disrupts their ability to be on time to graduate.
So then the next slide, if you look at our English, our EL graduation rates are significantly higher than the previous slide.
Yes, because
Right. So this isn't a 4-year span, correct?
I think I know what you're getting at here. So, Jeremy, if you go back to the previous slide, one back. That 2018-19 group, the 54.9% were on track at the end of their freshman year. That group actually became the 78.5% graduation rate. So we did some catching up there with those kids.
Okay.
And one of the benefits of the current structure of Wenatchee High School schedule is that it provides multiple opportunities for kids to regain credits if they fall behind. Wenatchee High School currently has 32 credit offerings available over the 4-year span, and it takes 24 credits to graduate. So if a student gets behind early on in the freshman year, they have opportunities to regain some of those credits that they missed. In fact, an opportunity in the current schedule exists for a student who doesn't have success in the first semester in the Algebra 1 class to take that class again second semester or even the following year to regain credit. And I think that has contributed to what you see in the increase in some of the trends here over time is the increase in opportunity.
So I'm going to challenge that.
Okay.
We're not looking at the data as a cohort. I'm assuming we're not. So in that 4-year span, how many English language learners did we lose? Whether they dropped out, mainly, I guess, dropping out 5th year. So I think we really need to look at the data and see. I did my master's research on standardized testing, and that's how test scores are inflated, right? It's not that, hey, I mean, we probably are. However, we need to really look at the data as a cohort. We had 335 freshmen start. How did they move up throughout their years? And out of those 350 students, how many actually did graduate on time? I think that data would be more telling.
And I can look into that. That's a good question. I believe that this is cohort data. It is a cohort group that OSPI follows over the 4 years. So this slide would represent the group that entered as freshmen, like they were freshmen in 21-22. They were with us through that time frame and graduated on time. I will check on that to make sure, but I think that is a cohort group.
Yeah, it would be great to really look deep, take a deep dive and see, are these really our numbers? Because I mean, this kudos to the district if our numbers really do increase by 30%, et cetera. But I think we really need to take a really deep dive into those numbers.
Right. I appreciate that comment as well. And I also appreciate the comment about if we look at our dropout rate at the same time, that will give us a much better picture of how we are really, really doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wondered, wondering I have as well as I know, was it 21-22, the new CTE graduation pathway came into effect? And I know, was it 48% of high school graduates exercise that pathway? So that could be, I mean, there's opportunities. Yeah,
If you followed cohorts, the 23.9% in 2021, we haven't seen the graduation rate for that yet. So I do think it's valid to check that we are capturing the entire incoming class. But, but we haven't seen the impact of the 23.9 in the graduation rates.
Gotcha.
Can I've been looking at the data, and there's a significant difference in the English learners versus the non-English learners. So I kind of like to look at relative changes. So if you look at the reading just for 1 year, fall to winter, the English learners improved the green and yellow classes to combine by 14%. The English learners increased by 10%. So even though the English learners are way ahead, the number of students who moved out of the red and into the yellow and green was a higher percentage. Then if you look at the math, you get a similar pattern where the English learners improved by 19% on that measure, and the non-English learners improved by 11%. Then now we look at the graph, this data that we were concerned about. When I look at the 9th grade on track, so that's kind of a hopeful sign that the percent increase looked a little bit better. It doesn't mean anything great. It means something is happening. Keep watching, keep working. 2021 from 1920, the English learners dropped by more than 50%, from 59.5% to 24%, massive. Yet the non-English learners went from 82 to 57. That's, maybe a 75%, 25% drop, dramatic difference in the drop. But then when you look at the recovery rate, it's still a problem, because if you look at 21, 22 at 68.5%, the non-English learners are back to about 80% or better of where they were before COVID. But the English learners are only at about 60% of where they were before COVID. So that's a major challenge, I think. Do you have any comments on, because I'm then looking at highly speculative, just looking at data, pre-COVID, COVID, the changes and the partial recoveries, they're significantly different. Do you have any comment on that?
I do not.
But it does look like we had a much bigger blow in one population from COVID than the other.
Yes, I would agree that COVID had the greatest impact.
Yeah.
On our most vulnerable students.
Yeah.
And multilingual learners being certainly at the top of that list.
Right. And then at the stage of these statistics, we're catching up slower on that group than on the other group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's one good point. Thank you, Martin. Because I think next year we're going to turn a corner back to some of the activities that we had implemented pre-COVID. So very good point. Thank you. And the last set of data I'd like to bring to your attention is student climate survey. When I've been looking, this is, so again, as a new director, new to bilingual services, I've been really interested in school improvement of districts that have similar or greater needs than we do here in Wenatchee, and who are those districts that are in those positions but moving the needle, that are moving their systems forward. And a big component of that is around school climate and culture. So when I see the student climate surveys where multilingual learners rate their belonging in their schools similar to the non-ML learners, that to me is a real silver lining, meaning that the climate in our buildings is fertile ground to be doing some work. And so that Heidi and I will be talking to you about, because climate and community and culture building and building connections with families, all of that is at the top of the list on some of the elements of the schools and the districts that are moving the needle. They don't talk about programs. They don't talk about staffing and we have this much money for this and that. It's all about those students and families feeling a community connection to their schools where they are empowered. Their students feel like they can take risks because I have a minor in Spanish and I like to sort of throw it around sometimes downstairs with Alfonso. But I tell you what, it's when I'm just having fun, it's kind of comes out. But when the pressure's on, it's hard. It's like I get a brain block, right? And he told me the other day, that's exactly how the students feel. And it was, so it's like it's beginning to make sense because we are asking our kids to be very vulnerable and take risks in terms of their communicating in language. So that was just kind of a fun thing, a little tidbit that stuck with me with Mr. Lopez. But this is a silver lining. I just wanted to point that out because it's very important for change. Okay, so we know where we're at. We're not totally thrilled about it. What are we going to do? Well, we're obligated. I'm sorry, some more connections, feeling valued at school. Again, similar. Okay. So we're obligated, the state, we are obligated to provide services around ELD. You'll hear ELD, which is English language development. How are we helping students develop English language from their native language? And then also meaningful access to content. And these are the two priorities when the state comes in to review our programs. They want to see documented evidence that these two things are happening for every one of our 1,700 multilingual learners. And this is where I learned a lot going through the CPR this year. This was one thing where I learned a lot, and Heidi and I are really excited about next year. But I wanted her to talk a little bit more about what this means in practice. And so I'd like to invite Heidi up here.
Hi. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it on? Is it working? Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, so the question is, how do we serve our students? How do we develop that English language proficiency so when they take the assessment, they're able to grow out of that assessment within that 6 years and demonstrate that proficiency? So we are required to provide both designated ELD, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is, and integrated ELD. And it's like two hands. You need them both. And our students, our bilingual students, need those both. So what we have to do is figure out, and we are doing some of these things, and we are working towards getting better at some of these things. So let's talk first about integrated ELD, which is that green side of the chart or the slides up here. And so integrated ELD happens in every classroom every day. So it is providing meaningful access to content designed to support academic language and learning in all core content classrooms, in our math classroom, in our science classroom, social studies, ELA, every classroom. And we scaffold that language support so that students can reach those rigorous academic standards. So it can be provided by a teacher, and most oftentimes is provided by the classroom teacher, specifically trained to provide that support. So integrated ELD happens within the regular classroom in all content areas. The focus of integrated ELD is the content of the lesson with language support. So the language support could be sentence frames to help kids form those complete sentences to share their thoughts and ideas about what they're learning. It could be teaching academic vocabulary so that they have the language to be able to learn and to explain and to use what they are learning to access that content. It could be in classrooms, TPR, total physical response. So when we say the word up, up. And so our kids are seeing that that's what that is. That's called total physical response. That's a GLAD strategy that many of our teachers have been trained in. They've been trained in choral responses and in charts that they draw pictures for the students to access the content. They're called pictorial input charts. And I always draw it because that's what I do when I make a chart. So all of those visuals that support the learning, those are all the things that should be happening in the classrooms all the time. That's that integrated support. And the standards for that are the content standards. And we integrate those language standards with that. That's meaningful access to content. One of the things, Martin, that I really appreciated that you noticed is that it's hard, it kind of our multilingual learners are having a harder time coming back from that pandemic. And one of the things that happened is before the pandemic, our students sat in groups. You walked into a classroom and you saw table groups, especially at the elementary level. And you saw kids putting their heads together and sharing their ideas and using that language of the classroom. And you saw them grouped together on the carpet to watch the teacher present the information in a visual way. And those are all really good supports for our language learners. But when we came back from the pandemic, kids were spread out. Kids had masks. Kids didn't sit close. Kids didn't put their heads together and talk about what they were learning. And all of those strategies that are really good strategies for all kids, but so important for our language learners, they weren't all happening. And so those meaningful access to content supports took a little while to be able to come back. And now you're starting to see those again. You're seeing kids in groups. You're seeing heads together. Kids are talking about what they're learning. They're sharing out their ideas. Teachers are pulling kids close to the carpet again in the elementary level, and kids are having structured conversations in middle school and high school, opportunities to respond with each other and process their thinking. Last year, you had a presentation about ways to, with Betsy Streen and Alyssa, I can't think of her last name. What? Johnston, yes, about those opportunities to respond and some of those strategies. So they're happening again, which is good for our ML students, and it's also good for all of our students. That's meaningful access to content. But that's only one part of what our students need to gain that English proficiency. They also need what we call designated ELD, which is English language development specifically targeted to help students understand the language of English. So designated ELD is a specific time of the day. And its focus of where integrated ELD is, the focus is the content standards. The designated ELD portion, the specific explicit language instruction, is focused on language standards. And it happens, I'll talk about how it happens, how it used to happen and where it's headed as we get into the next slide. The standards that they focus on during that time are those English language development standards. So integrated ELD is focused on content with language supports, and designated ELD is focused on language using the content that they're learning to talk about. Clear as mud? It's, it's hard. So I brought a few examples to just kind of show you the difference between the two. So integrated ELD, the meaningful access to content in grade 2. A teacher would clarify the language used while prompting for students to find text evidence to support an inference. So that would be integrated. They're helping with that, clarifying the language and giving that support on what that language means. Designated ELD would be teachers help students examine the author's use of the verbs to convey how the character is feeling. So it's hard to make an inference if you don't understand the verbs that show how the character is feeling. So do you see that little subtle difference? So maybe in 5th grade, a teacher guides students in researching and writing reports on the ecosystem. That would be integrated ELD, walking through the language and the supports to do that. Designated ELD, a teacher helps English, ML students identify words and phrases that create cohesion in the text that they're trying to read and write. So the connecting words, those words that however, and therefore, and so, and because, those are the kinds of words that we need to understand to be able to read and write and comprehend. So focus on the language, English language development, focus on the content with language support is the meaningful access to content. And we need to do both.
So I
Yeah.
hate to ask so many questions
please do.
between the presentation. So if I'm a 4th grader
Mhm.
newcomer at Washington Elementary and the teacher is monolingual,
Mhm.
how is that? I mean,
Yeah.
can you explain to me
Yeah.
how that support, how these supports would be
Yeah.
applied to a newcomer?
Yeah, thank you for asking about newcomers, because we have, and we've seen more this year. I mean, we have quite a few newcomers. And so newcomers get additional support. At the elementary level, we have ELD specialists that provide additional support. Many of them speak Spanish already. So because most of our newcomers are Spanish speaking, that helps. But we also have programs that are targeted for developing that language of school and that BICS, basic interpersonal communication. And so we have programs for primary and intermediate in elementary school that help students learn that survival language of school as they are working with that ELD specialist. We also have a program called, I'm losing my words tonight. Not language for learning. There's two. We have language for learning and we have Imagine Learning. That's the one. Imagine Learning is that computer program that also helps develop that language, and they hear it in Spanish and English and it develops that language. So those are really good supports at the elementary for newcomers. At the middle school, we have a class, we have scholars classes for newcomers to develop that language, and also our level 1 students that are still more in that beginning level of Spanish. So, and then at the high school, there's a newcomers class. They have some newcomers classes for those students to help them transition into the school setting in English. They also get these. So they get that and they get more. So that's how we support our newcomers right now, but that is a challenge. It is a definite challenge.
I'm just thinking, so content, core content
Mhm.
courses at the high school, you have math, science, English, and then you have one period of English language development.
Uh-huh.
A student goes through 5 periods, or 3,
Mhm.
4 periods a day, where the content really is not being absorbed because of that language barrier.
Absolutely. And I'm still learning high school because my world has been elementary for a while. But as I met with the high school ELD team and they talked about the newcomers class also is an ELA credit. So they are earning that ELA credit. So that is their ELA class at that time. And then the other classes that they're in, we have paraeducator support to support them. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine going to another country and going to school and trying to learn academic content in a language that is not my first language. So it is definitely still a challenge and a work toward to try to figure out better ways to support our students. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, so to follow up on
Yeah.
that, the meaningful access to content, we're delivering that content in English only, correct?
Yes.
So it seems pretty impractical to me to think that a student can go through 3 or 4 periods a day before they might be able to ask a question if it was a word they didn't understand, or how can they gain understanding when there's no in the classroom. Seems like we have in monolingual teaching classes, we have that lack of ability to provide in real-time support, which
Yeah, it's a challenge.
how much of a gap do we have in that area?
I don't know. It's something that we need to find out. Yeah, like I said, I'm not an expert in the high school realm yet in how we are serving our students. As we explore that further and dig into that more, maybe we'll be able to.
But
figure
at
out how to
any
fill
level,
that gap.
elementary, middle, or high school.
Elementary
seems-
level is covered very well with our use of GLAD strategies, because students are seeing the images that go along with the words. They're being supported in their language with chants and using that language. And then they have the additional support of the designated ELD time and the newcomer support.
Okay.
So, and then middle school also, I would say probably the area that needs the most support is figuring out how to provide more support at the high school level. But
I'm really interested in what that gap is. So I have
Yeah.
just a couple more quick questions. Survival language of the school, that I missed that. What is that?
yeah, it's the language of school. It's the programs that we have are designed to help kids start to understand the language, English language, in relation to asking for questions, responding in English to basic interpersonal communication. For example, in kindergarten, we have a program called Language for Learning, and it's very guided instruction for developing English language. So it would be a direct instruction program. So for example, if this was a pencil, the teacher would say, "This is a pencil. What is this?" And the students would learn to say, "That is a pencil. My name is Mrs. Busk. What's my name? Your name is Mrs. Busk." So it's that kind of, at the kindergarten level, it's that kind of language development to start to learn how we speak, how the English language works. So they're basic programs on developing basic understanding of how the English language works in more of a direct instruction format.
Okay, I don't love the name survival. It sounds like we're putting, and it's a little bit too much reality, really. We're putting them on an island, here's your survival.
Yeah, and that's my word I
Okay, good.
use. So yeah, you know what? Thank you for that, because I won't use that one anymore. It's
Okay.
really that teaching them how to access and have those basic interpersonal communication skills and some of that language that we use in the school setting.
Okay, so my last question for the moment is on the WIDA testing. So we're teaching kiddos the language related to the content that they're learning and the subject matters. So is the WIDA testing only in language, or is it also related to the content that they've learned in the classroom?
Great question. WIDA is a rigorous test, and they test listening, speaking, reading, and writing in the content areas. So for example, this last year at middle school, they have math problems that they have language questions around. I didn't see it personally, but I was talking with one of our new ELD trainers who is a coach at one of the middle schools, who was describing that, and Jeremy might be able to talk more about that. So yeah, so it's a rigorous, the questions are content, science questions, math questions. And so they need to have that academic vocabulary in those content areas to be able to meet standard on that assessment in English language.
How do we know that the classroom instruction is aligned with the test, basically? So we know that the children have received the instruction that's necessary to be proficient?
That is such a great question, and that's where we're headed. So I'm going to talk about that next. When we had the previous assessment, the ELPA 21, before this last year, we knew that assessment so much better because we had given it for a long time, and we knew what the students were being asked to do. The WIDA is very new, and not all we're in the process and will be in the process of training our teachers more to learn more about how the students are assessed and in those assessments, because if they don't know the rigor of that assessment. And you are so right. That is a great question, because we need to make sure that our educators understand how our students are being assessed so that they can provide that instruction and make sure that they're raising that rigor to meet the rigor of our assessment for English language learners. Yeah. Thank you for those questions. They were great.
Heidi, you made a reference to newcomers. However, when I was reviewing the multilingual learners plan, we don't have a newcomers program.
We don't have a specific newcomers program. We serve our newcomers in the ways that I was describing, but we don't have a newcomers program where some places have all the newcomers go through this
Our
program
district
first.
used to have a newcomers program.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm new to the
Mhm.
district for,
I think
so
it
don't
might
know
have been
past
before
history.
Bill was in special programs.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we can talk more about that too at other times, but yeah, we don't have that now. We're really working towards inclusive practices and using strategies that are inclusive for all of our students and including all of our students. But we know that the newcomers, it's a challenge to come into a new language.
It is. And so what prompted my conversations with Bill was, we've been talking about the inclusive program with special education and the emphasis there is on that and the changes we're making to really address the needs of students, of staff and everything.
Yeah.
And which is great because we need that, right? However, I think this is the similar model we can follow for our English language learners. And it's something that hasn't been talked about much.
Yeah.
So just, that whole inclusion model, why are we not using it for our English language learners as well?
Yeah. And I just made, that's part of our inclusion, right? That's what I mentioned when I talked about our ML learners is those inclusive practices. For example, you're going to see the way we used to do things and some of the slides are the next slide, and you'll see how it's shifting towards that more inclusive practice. Thank you.
Heidi, I did.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I had written down one more question. So in the early exit program, which is K through 12, Jeremy talked about the transitional program being 6 years in length. So do those early exit students, that's only 3 years.
It is only 3 years.
Are they receiving additional supports after that time, or are they considered to be proficient? And
they're only considered proficient if they achieve proficiency on the WIDA assessment. So our students in our transitional bilingual early exit program don't always exit the transitional bilingual program. They don't achieve English proficiency by the end of second or third grade. So they're still in program, and then they move into into our supportive mainstream classrooms, and then they're served that way. So with that integrated and designated DLD.
And the additional support they get is they get instruction up to 90% in kindergarten of their instruction would be in their native language. And so then that's phased out over 3 years.
okay.
But they
Before you
don't
get to your
necessarily
summary, another uninformed question. I'll describe a scene, a monolingual teacher and a multilingual student, whose primary language is not English. They have the textbook, let's say it's mathematics in their home language, and then they try to learn, and there's the time when they're not getting additional support. I'm going to go back to what Jeremy said about when you asked to speak in your second language and you freeze from anxiety or stuff like that. The other word that comes, and I've been in that situation too, the other thing that comes to my mind is you just get saturated and exhausted. And if you think of somebody, even if they're relatively proficient in English, going through all day where their primary explanation is in English. So this student with the own language mathematics textbook, listening to English and occasionally getting some help just kind of switches off at times because you just reach saturation. I don't know how common that is, or but I think it's a realistic scenario. What makes me think when you talk about inclusion is we spend a lot of time on SEL. Is there an aspect, go talk to a guru in SEL where for those children who are in that situation, there may be some special tools that can be added to SEL to either give them more relaxation and more dealing with that anxiety saturation impact of dealing with that with English. And it's just a question whether there's anything out there.
Yeah, that's a great question and something to think about. Were you jumping in? He seems excited to jump in here.
Well, I'm in planning for next year. We've got, I've just been researching some work around elevating student voice and thinking about integrating it into some of the work with this in school improvement. We have some schools that are starting some school improvement planning for next year. And anyway, so it's early in the development, but yes, we're working with I've reached out to the Center for Educational Effectiveness to try some long-term work with leaders and through student surveys and elevating student voice to get at the heart of getting data from that reflective information, that feedback from students to inform instructional practice, and having an avenue for students to contribute on a more, rather than just take their once a year student survey, but that it's an ongoing feedback loop. And so it's kind of exciting. And I think that might get at part of what you mentioned.
Sorry. My brain just kind of clicks. So 23 languages. We have students in classrooms, but we have families at home, parents who speak those 23 languages. And previously we have access to a contractor who assisted with some interpretation and translation. So do we have a systematic way of communicating with parents in those 23 languages so that they can be supportive of their students in our district?
When we send notification of qualification for services, we have to provide that communication in whatever that preferred home language is. So that's a requirement for TBIP. As far as interpretation services, that's where there's a line between us and what the district is responsible to do for the community. They're obligated to communicate in any language that's out there. So we meet our obligation through our services. When we issue letters, we have required parent communication that has to be on file in their preferred language. And then as for interpretation services, that's kind of a separate issue that I'm not necessarily in those conversations.
Yes,
right?
we have a contractor. We actually have two contractors that are available to district staff that they can use for a variety of languages. We just reach out to them, let them know the language when we need them available. Sometimes they do it via Zoom. They can also do it via phone call. And our, other information, like our website has translation available for different pieces, but we do have actually 2 contractors that we
Okay.
work with.
So if it's time to do, parent teacher conferences, and if a student is struggling in a particular way, or alternatively is being recognized for success in a certain way,
Right.
do we utilize those contractors' services to communicate that with families?
Yes, and primarily our second language learners are Spanish speakers, and we have staff members that help with that directly. But for some of the other languages, we rely on those contractors to help with services. Yep.
All right. We're going to finish this up. Maybe, I don't know. So we just wanted to walk you through how we used to do English language development, what we're currently doing, and where we're headed. And so in the past, integrated ELD, that meaningful access to content for kids in the core classrooms, happened during our tier 1 core instruction. And our main strategies were GLAD strategies. So teachers were trained in GLAD strategies, and we continue that because they're great strategies. And we provided designated ELD, usually during a pull-out service at the elementary, and then during electives at secondary. And then newcomers received additional ELD support. So currently we have integrated meaningful access to content provided during tier 1, but we've expanded those strategies. And so all the way through high school, we are working on, in addition to GLAD strategies, which is mainly at elementary, we are using sentence frames. Opportunities to respond is part of something that we are really working towards. So all students have that opportunity to talk or respond for 100% engagement. And then collaborative structures, and we are beginning to bring in that integrated ELD, meaningful access to content, into our tier 2. It's that intervention time and that tier 3. So even if they are receiving support services in their special education classroom, we need to make sure that we are providing access to that content. So we're still pulling in visuals. We're still using all those really good strategies to help support them in all of their tiers of education, or during the day. And then designated ELD, that targeted language instruction, is provided during at the elementary level during our walk to intervention model, that tier 2 and 3 walk to intervention, literacy intervention time. So they're getting creative in the ways that they're providing that support during that time, and during our ELD electives at secondary. And then we continue with newcomers receiving additional ELD support. But where we're headed and why we're really excited about the future for our students and our teachers to support our students is that we have hired 2 district multilingual trainers. So they are going to be supporting district-wide the best practice collaborative structures, opportunities to respond, sentence frames across the district, and other ELD strategies for that integrated time, and also supporting that designated ELD, trying to bring that into so it's closer to the content that they're learning. They will be providing that professional development on that integrated and the designated ELD. They will also be providing that WIDA training that we were talking about earlier. So not only how are our students assessed, but what are those standards, those language standards, and what do the proficiency levels really mean for our students, and how do we grow them through the proficiency levels? So a lot of support and training in that this coming year and beyond. And then we are working to develop a system and scope and sequence for designated ELD in tier 1. So we really have that mapped out of what does it look like in 4th grade, and what does it look like in 7th grade, and what does it look like in 11th grade and 12th grade, so that we have that system-wide designated ELD scope and sequence. So that's where we're headed. We are excited about that, and looking forward to the opportunity to really lift up our multilingual learners and bring them to proficiency in English and academic standards and growth, and just celebrate who they are and grow them. So thank you for that. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jeremy.
So next fall, you'll receive another revised multilingual plan for the year, which I hope to present to you sometime in the fall, because it will reflect some of the changes we have in mind. The 2 EL trainers that we hired, those are the two. You think about what should teachers be doing? These 2 trainers are the ones who know what teachers should be doing. What I have learned through the CPR process is that every teacher needs to be trained as a multilingual teacher, right? And that's the best way to do it, is to make people available where when they get a newcomer, help me, what can I do? We can send a trainer into that classroom to help that teacher redesign their lesson, emphasize some points of instruction, etc., to at least begin to bridge that gap. So super excited about that. We'll have a K5 and a 6-8. So one dedicated 612, one dedicated elementary, one secondary. So that'll be in the plan. Excited about that. Also integrating, as I mentioned before, there was that kind of that school climate and culture, not to mention ethnic culture piece, because we are fortunate to have 2 primary cultures in our community. I met with cabinet just to discuss the idea that, there's a lot going on with our multilingual learners, and that culture piece that could be integrated into our equity work as a district. And so we're pretty excited about that. Because again, even instructionally, along with the language objectives, is to understand that cultural piece that can sometimes separate, us and cultures that we're not used to interacting with. And so I just really excited about that, as well as being a part of our equity training. Heidi spoke a lot about the designated versus ELD, in integrated ELD. What I mean is that will be an instructional priority, because all teachers will be considered as multilingual teachers, and then our trainers right there. And I know that whatever we do in this realm, whatever we do, I know will have a wider impact with students that maybe don't qualify for services but are on the fringes. So I know that this work will impact all students across the district. So really excited about that. And so lastly, just to summarize, we do think of these initiatives and plans within the context of the programs that we have in place. And so just a reminder that what we spoke of in general in bulk was around supportive mainstream, but we do have unique programs with unique goals. And so we have to find ways, a 2-way dual language it is a unique program with unique outcomes, and we need to honor that. So there's a whole lot of work also being directed there. We talked about early exit and just really looking at and maximizing that program. One supportive mainstream, one thing that we have, it's called sheltered instruction. When you have enough newcomers, if you have enough where you could have a class, let's say a math class in Spanish all by itself, we would call that sheltered. And we have those, we have had those in pockets before too. So I wanted to just mention that it sort of just depends on where the load is and if we can staff it. But in general, we go supportive mainstream in general, because that's something that we have in all buildings. But we're excited about just really defining the program. We're excited to put all eyes on it. Also the inclusive nature instructionally, that we're going to equip all teachers on this journey. And so I'm excited to see this play out next year and in the years to come, because it's going to take some time, but I think we'll see the benefits in the near future. So thank you for listening, and if you have any more questions.
I don't have any more questions, just to kind of want to put it on the radar also. And I've mentioned this before, we have probably about 40% of our special education students are also identified as English language learners. So that's something, this we really need to really focus, and how do we combine strategies to really address both needs? And is it really a learning disability, or is it a language issue? And I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of unknowns and how to address them, but I think acknowledging that is a way to move forward. This is not, I mean, you're kind of in the hot seat because you're currently the director, but this is not new. These are not new issues. You just inherited a board with a lot of questions. And I'm excited I'm excited for the work and the progress. And I hope we get to see another presentation in the fall. Where are we now, in the implementation of the new strategies? Because you're right on point. It's like, okay, we're making progress on our inclusion model in regards to the sense of belonging, because that's where it starts. If our kids feel safe, they feel they're acknowledged, they feel valued, then we can only go up from there. So I appreciate that the effort that the district is making, building that inclusion, equity, and the work that you guys are doing. So, nothing against you, Jeremy, or you, Heidi. It's just, this is a really difficult subject, and it's easier to not talk about it, right? And maybe someday it'll just go away. But the reality is that we are here for our students, and we're here for all our students and addressing the needs. So thank you.
And I just want to say thank you. I told these guys 20 minutes and you'll be out of here. But look, I mean, the reality is this is high on the radar. We know based on some of the data that you saw today, and we're trying to be transparent and show you there's some ugly things that we need to address and be upfront about those things. And we don't have all the answers, but we're working hard to make some progress. And I appreciate these two and the cabinet team who have been coming together with our principals around the early exit model, around the supports that we provide for students, and creating a plan for moving this work forward. And so I'm excited for the district next year and Dr. Kalahar and the team as they move forward. Looking forward to showing up at a board meeting to see the multilingual plan in the fall next year from that side. So appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have an action item. Bill will be presenting on resolution 0323, the declaration for certain school district property as surplus.
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple slides, Liz, if you want to pull those up here, just so we have a reminder. On the docket for action tonight, we have the surplus of a section of property adjacent to Mission View. And so that we're all on the same page here, we're gonna pull up a slide related to this resolution 0323. If you want to click to the next slide, this is the property that we're talking about. And you'll recall that we were approached by Chelan County Public Works earlier regarding the purchase of this property for their use as a stormwater control facility. So they have done their due diligence. They deemed the site is feasible to construct a water quality facility and would like to purchase this piece of land for that project. We have the authority to sell that through an intergovernmental transfer under RCW, which permits school districts to sell their property to another governmental entity. But in order to do this, we must first declare by resolution of the board that this property is no longer required for school purposes. So tonight we have for action resolution number 0323, which would declare the property surplus and open it up for purchase by the county. And we had to do a little bit of work behind the scenes because that little red section was parceled with the entire Mission View lot. So the county helped us out in understanding how that works. So if you want to go to the next slide, Liz, this, which is also attached to the resolution that you're considering tonight, has the designation for the property as a subsection of the lot. And when we reached out to the property, to the Chelan County about this property, they let us know that because it is bordered by this Chelan City right of way on all sides, even though it currently shares the same parcel number as the portion with Mission View, it is a separate parcel because of the surrounding road. So all they needed to do was provide us with a description that describes it as a sub portion of the property, which they did and is on this document from the county. So we are ready to look at a resolution to surplus this property and move this thing forward.
Thank you, Bill. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
I will move resolution number 0323 to declare the property is defined in Exhibit B as a subsection for surplus and allow for its removal from the district to be sold or otherwise disposed of.
I
Per the resolution.
second the motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
I guess I just want the record to be clear that what we're referring to as the property as legally described is really identified in the exhibits A and B as the deed area. Yes.
That is correct.
Do we need to amend the motion?
I don't think we need to, because it's just as long as we know that how we've defined the property in the resolution is actually refers to what is in the exhibits identified as the deed area. So the deed area takes on the term as the property.
In other words, we're not selling the whole school.
Correct. And because the property is not technically mentioned on the exhibits, that is the legal description, just making sure that we've got some reference to the deed area is the property.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving resolution number 0323 to declare the property in Exhibit A and B as surplus, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is superintendent report. Bill?
Thank you. I've got a couple of things I'd love to share with the board and the public tonight. In April, our WHS ASL or American Sign Language group competed at the state competition in Puyallup. It was their first time to do that, and the team took third place as a finish. And an individual, Keenan Alcombrack, placed third overall in the alternate division, and you can still get tickets for their Sign Idol show on Friday of this week. We had hundreds of families attend the Be Well, Stay Well event on April 30th to celebrate the Day of the Child at Medhow Park. And our Director of Hispanic and Latino Relations, Mr. Lopez, was the event MC. He does a great job with those kinds of things. And the district was well represented with an information table and helpful staff. In addition, the talents of the Lewis and Clark Elementary School folkloric dance group helped entertain the crowd. So we were well represented at that event, and it was a great event for our community in the park that was redone several years ago by the Parque Padrinos group. So it's a great place to get together in the center of the community. And as you know, our elementary and middle school students recently participated in the Apple Blossom Youth Parade on April 29th. We saw huge numbers of students and staff and parents march in the parade this year. And 3 of our elementary schools walked away with special awards. My alma mater, Columbia Elementary School, won the award for Best Elementary. Lincoln Elementary placed second in that division, and third place went to Valley Academy. So congratulations to our elementary schools. Orchard Middle School's drill team won first place at the youth parade, and Pioneer's drill team took second. So a great showing by our elementary and middle schools, and a lot of fun to see them involved in that parade. The GA band and the drill teams also did an amazing job at the grand parade last weekend. And I also want to recognize the talents of the many students that performed on stage with bands and other community groups at Memorial Park as part of the festival as well. Recently, our first graders walked the Jacobson Preserve Trail during a STEM field experience where they discovered what the plants and animals in the shrub steppe ecosystem need to survive. We had community volunteers that hosted education stations where students were able to deepen their understanding through hands-on activities. They get to touch some real animal pelts. There's a coyote skull and some other things that they get some hands-on experience with in that trip. So it was a great event. I am excited to say that our SROs participated in basketball tournaments at all 3 middle schools with our 6th and 7th graders in a friendly game of hoops with bragging rights on the line, and also a chance to win some tickets to Wenatchee Bighorn game. And I will say the SROs did not end up beating the students, but they did enjoy the time, and it was a great relationship builder for them, which is a key component for their role. We have 6 students and 2 Wenatchee performances, SpongeBob the Musical and the Clue play, that are among the nominees announced for the upcoming Numerica PAC 3rd Annual Apple Awards. And the Apple Awards is a community celebration of theater and performing arts in our region. So we're excited to have some groups nominated for Apple Awards. That ceremony will be May 15th at 7 p.m. at the Numerica Performing Arts Center, and tickets are on sale on their website. So love to see some community folks and staff consider supporting that wonderful event. A highlight for me was our high school soccer team tied with Eastmont for the best record in the league, and therefore we will share the league championship with Eastmont this year. So congratulations and to those groups moving forward. And in closing in my report, I just want to come back to something that Kelly Lopez shared. I want to say thank you to all our hardworking teachers. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we greatly appreciate all our teachers and the work they do every day to ensure our students feel safe, seen, and valued, and ready for their futures. So thank you. That is my report tonight.
Board communication.
Yeah. Just one quick little thing. I had the honor and privilege of being interviewed by a WHS student, Julia Franklin, who's in Mrs. Molitor's, I'm not sure which the name of the class is, but they were required to propose a policy. And her team's policy was regarding the parking, the condition of the parking lot at WHS. Much to Juliana's dismay, I got to inform her that the project that she was working on was not really a policy, but an implementation. And so she was a little bit flummoxed by that and how she was going to get the team to adjust their presentation. So Juliana, if you're listening, sorry about that. But I think you'll do a great job. It was a learning opportunity in a first rate. And I suggested to her that maybe Mrs. Molitor had created that learning opportunity by design. And I hope I get invited to the presentation in the classroom. It was fun.
I'd like to add my appreciation to teachers this week. And then I was going to have nothing else, but Sunny Slope made me change my mind this morning. So welcome back to author visits to elementary schools, which used to be a highlight of every year. And I don't know whether it's the first one in the district. And these are often, I think, sponsored by the PTSAs. So appreciate that work. So the author was once upon a time librarian at Mission View, I learned. So local boy, made good, very famous author now, and highly recognized. He gave a very personable talk about the books and the content and himself, and that was all fun. But what I wanted to stress was this is one of the best motivational talks I have ever listened to. And we talk about making students future ready. And I was there when the 3rd to 5th graders were listening, and they were just all ears, totally paying attention. And he talked about the difference between dreaming and not doing anything versus having goals and acting, and then reminded everybody that it's work to achieve your goals. And he had a really good example as well as an author, 99 times being rejected by publishers, how to overcome adversity, hang in there and do it. It was a very human thing that an adult could have benefited from. So I really thought that was a magnificent example, and I was really impressed at how the elementary school students got a leg up for what they learn in middle school and get ready for a pathway to after graduation in high school. It was also co-sponsored by the library, and I want to add what I always say, Bill, that libraries deserve more recognition. They're not just about books on shelves. They are libraries and librarians. They're a resource for exploration and discovery and extension that can serve everybody inside a school building. And I think we really need to recognize that and be conscious that we can probably make better use of that whole aspect in the future. And I hope we do. But that was a great author presentation at Sunny Slope.
And I would like to recognize the elementary schools that had participants at the Method School competition this past weekend. Wenatchee was represented really well by several elementary schools. And then the plant sale, huge success on the plant sale. I always make a point to save the date. This year was bigger and better than previous years. And I saw they made close to $50,000 in that long weekend. So kudos to all the students participated in that and the teachers. That's it for me, Julie.
Real quick, dovetailing on Martin's, my daughter, my second grader, was in that author presentation today, and we had a very engaging conversation after school today about it. And one of the things she remembered is his first 2 books weren't very good, so he didn't get them published, but she wants to read his second 2 books. and it was great. It was just the story of perseverance, and she really, for a second grader, really was engaged and enjoyed it and wants all the books now. So I'm glad she had that opportunity. I wish I had been there too. Maybe a correction, the district soccer, as far as I understand, there's a title game tomorrow night or Thursday night. Eastmont is hosting the boys soccer for the title game. I bought tickets, so that is my understanding. They were separated by 1 goal, so it's district playoff at Eastmont to Thursday night. So Jim Beeson sent out the link. So and then I also just want to say thank you to our teachers. They've persevered been very flexible, resilient over the last several years. I appreciate their efforts tremendously, both as a board member, as a parent. I know they put in incredible time, even hearing from them after school, which I'm sorry if you have my son. You get extra goodies. No, there's just the work they do is incredible. And I really appreciate them. Just when we think we're going to start getting back to normal, we throw more curveballs and challenges. And I appreciate the work that they've put into being informed of our budgetary needs and being engaged in that process with us and helping for the greater good of the district and all of our students, families. So very appreciative of all of our teachers. Thank you.
And the only thing I have to add is that I'll be attending the first junior ROTC dining out, which happens on the 20th. I understand that there is a renowned retired general who's a former student of the Wenatchee School District, and that is their speaker for this first dining out. So I'm terribly, terribly excited about that. And also tennis districts happen this weekend. So
If we have no other official business, this meeting is adjourned.